I spent $20,000 on that vacation. 20,000. Every cent came from my savings. Every plan shaped by the hope of seeing my family smiling together in Hawaii, sunsets, laughter, and memories that would heal the quiet loneliness of my widowed life. For months, I pictured the kids running through waves while my son, Simon, grilled on the beach. It was supposed to be a trip of connection, not betrayal. The San Francisco airport was buzzing with that pre-holiday energy, families juggling suitcases, couples wearing floral shirts, that distinct hum of people about to escape their routines. I felt proud, watching my grandchildren bounce with excitement. "Grandpa, we're going to see dolphins." Mia squealed. Her brother, Ethan, dragged a suitcase twice his size, grinning from ear to ear. Then Simon walked up, his expression tight, almost rehearsed. "Dad, I have some bad news." The words sliced through the noise like a blade. I frowned, confused. What kind of bad news? He couldn't meet my eyes. "I forgot to buy you a ticket." For a moment, I didn't understand. My rolling suitcase bumped into my leg, a dull thud echoing the hollow sound in my chest. "You forgot?" My voice cracked. "Simon, we've been planning this vacation for 3 months." "I know," he said quickly, eyes darting away. "It's been crazy at work. And with all the bookings, I must have overlooked." I stepped toward the airline counter. No, we'll fix this. It's fine." I forced a smile at the attendant. "Can you please check if there's a reservation for Lee Willis?" She typed on her keyboard, her polite smile faltering after a moment. "I'm sorry, sir, I don't see your name on any reservation." My stomach dropped. "But my family should have theirs, Simon Willis. Party of 4. She nodded. "Yes, I see that. 2 adults, 2 children, departing today at 4:15. But no Lee Willis on the booking." The words tilted the world under my feet. "That's impossible," I whispered. Simon appeared beside me, placing a firm hand on my arm. "Dad, we need to talk." I pulled away. "Not now, Simon. We can still." He tightened his grip. "No, we can't. The flight's boarding. We'll manage somehow. You should go home." I stared at him, the noise of the terminal fading until all I could hear was the slow, uneven beat of my heart. "I paid for this trip," I said quietly. "The hotel, the car, the activities, for everyone. We're grateful, Dad," he said, his tone clipped. "But it's too late. We can't hold the flight." I looked over his shoulder and saw Fern ushering the kids toward the security gate. She avoided my gaze, her voice bright and falsely cheerful. "Come on, kids, say goodbye to Grandpa." That's when I saw it, the look on Simon's face. Not guilt, not panic, relief. They hadn't forgotten. They'd planned it. He turned and walked toward the gate, disappearing into the stream of passengers. My hands trembled as I gripped the handle of my suitcase. The Hawaiian Airlines board flickered red. "Final call." The attendant's voice broke through my daze. "Sir, are you all right?" I forced a breath. "Yes, I just need a moment." But I wasn't all right. Not even close. I walked to a nearby bench, lowering myself slowly, the noise of the terminal washing over me like static. I opened my phone. The last text from Simon, sent just last night, read, "Can't wait to see you at the gate. Dad." My throat tightened. My hands shook as I scrolled through months of cheerful messages, family photos, shared itineraries. Every word now felt like a lie. I stood, steadied myself, and walked back to the counter. "Miss," I said calmly, though my heart was pounding, "when was that Willis reservation made?" She hesitated, glancing around before typing again. "It was booked 6 weeks ago." 6 weeks ago. The same week Simon told me he was finalizing details. The same week he told me not to worry, that he'd handle everything. "Thank you," I said, my voice low. As I walked out of the terminal, the glass doors sliding open to the cool afternoon air, something inside me shifted. The hurt was still there, raw and heavy, but beneath it, something colder began to form, clarity. They thought I was just an old man who'd quietly accept humiliation. They thought I'd go home, maybe cry, maybe forgive. They thought wrong. Outside, the taxi line stretched long, shimmering in the heat. When my turn came, the driver, A tired man in his 50s asked, "Where to, sir?" "Oakland, Montclair District." He nodded, loading my suitcase. As we pulled away from SFO, the golden afternoon light spread across the bay. My reflection in the window looked older than I remembered, but also sharper. Like a man who had just woken from a long dream. "Rough day?" the driver asked, glancing at me through the mirror. I gave a small, humorless smile. "You could say that." He chuckled softly. "Family stuff?" "Yeah," I said. "You ever have yours turn on you?" He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Brother, I've got ex-wives who still make voodoo dolls of me." For the first time all day, I smiled. Family knows where to stick the knife. Huh? You got that right. As the cab rolled past Daly City, I replayed every moment of the past few months. The family dinners where Simon promised to handle the bookings. Fern's subtle hints that I might prefer my own hotel, for comfort. The way she'd said, "You've done enough, Dad, just relax." They'd been preparing to cut me out all along. By the time the cab turned onto my street, the sky was painted in streaks of amber and violet. My heart was no longer breaking, it was calculating. Simon thought I'd given him money. He was about to learn the difference between a gift and a transaction. When the cab stopped, I handed the driver $60 for a $47 fare. He raised an eyebrow. "Keep the change," I said. He smiled. "Whatever you're planning, I hope they deserve it." "Oh," I said, stepping out, "they do." As the cab disappeared, I stood before my quiet home, the same door I'd locked this morning with excitement. Not knowing I'd return with betrayal in my luggage, I unlocked it, stepped inside, and let the silence greet me. The living room smelled faintly of coffee and old wood. My late wife's photo watched from the mantelpiece. Calm and knowing, I looked at her and whispered, "You were right, Martha. Kindness isn't weakness." I sat down at her old oak desk, turned on the lamp, and opened the folder labeled Hawaii 2025. Inside were invoices, receipts, proof, every lie Simon had told me, in print. Then I reached for the phone. It was time to make a different kind of reservation. The landline on my desk felt heavy, its coiled cord like a link to a time when trust still meant something. I dialed the resort's number printed on the glossy brochure, Grand Waia Resort. Maui, the kind of place that promised paradise. Paid for by my years of work and my faith in a son who just sold me out. Grand Waia Reservations. This is Co speaking. How may I help you? Her voice was smooth, trained to sound like sunshine. Yes, I need to cancel a reservation under the name Willis, I said, steady but cold. She began typing. Let me see here. Yes. I have a booking for 7 guests checking in tomorrow. Ocean View Suites for 10 nights. Are you sure you want to cancel? It's quite a special reservation. I'm sure. There will be a cancellation fee. Sir, she continued cautiously. $3,200. I almost laughed. $3,000 to erase $20,000 worth of betrayal? Cheap price for a lesson. That's acceptable. Cancel it now, please. There was a pause, the sound of keys tapping and papers printing. All right, Mr. Willis, it's done. You'll receive an email confirmation within the hour. Thank you, I said, then added, when someone arrives tomorrow expecting that reservation, what will you tell them? Only that it was canceled by the primary booking party at 6:47 p.m. Pacific Time. Perfect. I hung up. The sound of the dial tone echoed in the room like punctuation, sharp. Final. Satisfying. On the wall above the desk hung a framed picture from Christmas. My family gathered around the tree. Their smiles wide, mine real. I stared at it until those smiles began to look like masks. The silence in the house was thick. But for the first time in years, it didn't feel empty. It felt deliberate, focused. I poured myself a glass of water, sat back, and waited. Revenge didn't always require rage, sometimes. It only needed patience. By morning, I'd slept better than I had in months. No dreams, no guilt. The sun poured through the kitchen window. The coffee percolator humming its steady tune. The world moving on as if nothing had changed, except everything had. When I checked my phone, the screen was flooded with missed calls. 56 of them, all from the same Hawaii number. Simon. For a moment, I just watched the screen light up again and again, vibrating across the countertop like an insect trying to escape its own reflection. I let it ring until the call turned into a voicemail notification. Then another, and another. I brewed my coffee, added a splash of cream, and finally sat down to listen. Dad, call me back, urgent. The hotel says you canceled everything. Dad, this isn't funny. We're stuck here. Call now. The kids are crying. We have nowhere to go. Each message was more frantic than the last. I scrolled through them like reading chapters of panic. 11:47 p.m. Hawaii time. 12:03 a.m. 12:15. 1:20. 2:10. All night, every 15 minutes. The perfect rhythm of a guilty conscience. I pictured them standing at that elegant marble counter of the Grand Waya, Simon with his rehearsed confidence fading. Fern trying to charm the staff. The kids growing restless. The other guests watching. I could almost hear the panic in Simon's voice when the clerk told him, "Your reservation was cancelled by Mr. Lee Willis at 6:47 p.m. The same minute I'd hung up last night. My phone buzzed again. Another call from Hawaii. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the alert chimed. Dad, Simon's voice came through, raw and strained. I don't know what you think you're accomplishing, but you need to fix this right now. We spent the night in the hotel lobby. Pearl hasn't stopped crying. The kids don't understand what's happening. This is cruel and unnecessary and completely unlike you. Call me back. Cruel and unnecessary. I almost smiled. They'd left me at an airport. With no ticket, no apology, no plan. They'd turned their backs while I stood surrounded by strangers. And now they dared to call me cruel. I took a slow sip of my coffee, savoring the bitter warmth. It tasted like justice. But I wasn't finished yet. I opened the drawer of the desk and pulled out an old notepad. Martha had bought it years ago, insisting that I always write things down, dates, times, words that mattered. I clicked my pen and began noting the timeline. May 14, 2025 to 4:15 p.m. Simon departs SFO without me. May 15, 2025 to 6:47 p.m. I cancel hotel reservation. May 16, 2025 to 11:47 p.m. First panic call from Simon. May 17, 2025 multiple messages escalating to threats. That last line would come soon enough. I knew his tone. It always followed the same pattern: apology, guilt, demand, rage. I didn't have to wait long. At 8:03 a.m., my phone rang again. This time, I answered. Dad, finally. Simon's voice erupted through the speaker. Too loud, too fast. The hotel says you canceled our entire stay. We have nowhere to go. Do you understand what you've done? Good morning to you too, Simon, I said calmly, reaching for my notepad. How's your vacation going? Don't play games. The kids are exhausted. We can't get another room anywhere. Everything's booked solid. That's unfortunate, I said, making a note. 8:03 a.m. Simon angry, defensive. Dad, this isn't funny. We need you to call the hotel and fix this. I just have one question, I said softly. When you planned to leave me at the airport yesterday, where exactly did you expect me to spend my vacation? The line went silent. I could hear Fern whispering something in the background, her voice tight. Urgent. That's completely different, Simon snapped. This is about innocent kids. Were there innocent kids involved when you took my $20,000 and excluded me from my own trip? That's not the same thing. Then help me understand the difference. He faltered. Then his voice hardened. Fine. You want to play hardball? When I get back to California, you're going to regret this. You think you can manipulate this family with money? I wrote it down. Every word. You're going to regret this. Old man. Are you threatening me, Simon? I asked evenly. I'm promising you that actions have consequences. I paused. You're absolutely right, I said quietly, and you're about to find out what they are. Before he could respond, I hung up. The silence that followed was peaceful, almost sacred. Outside the window, sunlight cut through the morning haze. A hummingbird darted around Martha's old feeder, wings beating so fast they blurred into a shimmer. I sat back, watching it hover, and realized something simple but powerful. Revenge wasn't about anger, it was about correction. I turned the page in my notepad and began writing the next line. May 17, 2025. Contact attorney. Then, beneath it, one more. Objective. Legal protection. Permanent consequence. I reached for my phone, scrolled to a name I hadn't called in months, and pressed dial. Harland and Associates. This is Jennifer speaking. This is Lee Willis. I said, I need to schedule an urgent consultation with Bruce regarding estate planning. Of course, Mr. Willis. He has an opening tomorrow afternoon. Book it, I said, and tell him it's about family. As I hung up, the hummingbird finally flew away, disappearing into the morning sun. It was time for my son to learn the difference between inheritance and entitlement. Bruce's office sat 15 floors up in a glass tower that pretended to touch the bay. Inside, everything was polished and quiet, the kind of quiet that says, "We handle problems here and send them back into the world resolved." A receptionist with a calm voice led me down a corridor lined with framed degrees and discreet art. When Bruce opened the door, he gave the same firm, unhurried handshake I remembered from when Martha passed. Back then he'd helped me walk through grief without getting lost in paperwork. Today, I had no intention of getting lost. "Lee," he said, gesturing to a leather chair, "you sounded resolute on the phone." "I am." I placed my folder on the table, the one labeled Hawaii 2025, then a second, thicker folder. Bank statements, transfers, memos, a timeline I'd written in Martha's old notepad in careful block letters. This is a family matter. I want it handled in the law, not in anger. Bruce slid on reading glasses and listened as I told him everything. Chronologically, like an engineer presenting a failure report, the airport. The booking date confirmed as 6 weeks prior. The hotel cancellation, 56 calls in the night. The morning call with threats and the words, "Old man," which I'd written down with the timestamp. He didn't interrupt, only his pen moved. "How long has the pattern of financial support been going on?" he asked. 20 years. Conservatively. Tuition, mortgages, emergencies that turned out to be habits. Last year alone, 47,000. And the trip funds? 20,000 wired to Simon 6 weeks ago. Same week he booked 4 tickets without me. I have the transfer receipt. Bruce nodded, the way a doctor nods when lab results match the symptoms. All right, if you want to create lasting consequences and protection, we'll restructure your estate plan completely. California law allows a testator to disinherit an adult child for cause. The cause here is well-documented financial exploitation and recent coercive statements. Good, I said. I want my assets moved out of his shadow. He leaned forward. I'll propose a 3-part approach. First, a new will that explicitly excludes Simon and explains why. The rationale matters. Courts look for clarity. Second, a living trust and pour over provisions to minimize probate exposure and make contests harder and more expensive. Third, contemporaneous documentation of competency, a brief cognitive evaluation, witness statements, and a video of the execution ceremony. It sounds theatrical, it's not. It's bulletproofing. Do it, I said. We should also talk beneficiaries. Bruce added, if not Simon, then who? The Oakland Children's Education Foundation. I said without hesitation. UC Berkeley's engineering scholarships, senior services in Oakland, veterans assistance, and a discretionary fund for community development, small grants that keep the lights on for places doing quiet good. He made neat columns. OCEF, UCB Eng, senior SVCs, vets, community fund. Any percentages? 40% to the Children's Foundation, 30% to Berkeley Engineering, 10% to seniors, 10% to veterans, 10% to community. Clear, he said. We'll also craft a no contest clause. If Simon or anyone acting on his behalf challenges, they forfeit any nominal bequest they might otherwise receive. He'll challenge, I said. He believes entitlement is a birthright. Bruce's mouth tightened into something that wasn't a smile. Then we'll make his lawyer's job unpleasant. He scanned my notes again. You wrote, he said. You're going to regret this. Old man, Actions have consequences. Exact words? Verbatim. Keep that notepad pristine, Bruce said. Original ink. No torn pages. We'll photocopy and Bates stamp the set for our file. He tapped the page gently. Juries and judges don't forget sentences like that. A paralegal named David entered with a cart, forms, envelopes, a portable camera on a tripod, a date-stamped notary book. The choreography was precise. We'll do the competency piece first, Bruce said. A short orientation test administered by Mrs. Chen. Time, place, current events, basic calculation, recall. Then I'll ask you a few questions on camera about the provisions, who you are, what you own, who your family is, and why you're doing this. I'm doing this, I said, because kindness without boundaries breeds contempt. Bruce nodded once. Camera will like that. The test was simple, insulting in a way, but I didn't mind. I answered each prompt cleanly. The camera's red light stared without blinking while I said my name. The date, the city, my birthday, the president, the square root of 144. Then Bruce asked the questions that mattered. Mr. Willis, who are your heirs at law? My son, Simon, 2 grandchildren, minors. And how does your new plan address them? I leave nothing to Simon. My assets will support children he'll never meet and elders he'd never visit. That's not cruelty, that's stewardship. And why are you excluding your son? Because he took my money, lied, abandoned me at an airport, then threatened me when I stopped cooperating. The pattern spans 2 decades. Today, it stops. The camera captured my voice, steady as a measuring tape. When we finished, Mrs. Chen adjusted the tripod and checked the timestamp. David printed a short transcript header to match the video file hash and slid a notary seal across the table like a final note. Now the documents, Bruce said. He opened a binder filled with more pages than a life should require. The will, the trust, assignments, transfer on death designations, a directive authorizing him as executor with independent powers, a letter to my bank to retitle certain accounts into the trust's name, a schedule of personal property with instructions for donation. He read the key paragraphs aloud, his voice unhurried and clear. The testator, Lee Willis, being of sound mind and clear judgment, hereby excludes his son, Simon Willis, from all inheritance due to a documented history of financial exploitation and recent coercive threats directed at the testator. He looked up. You approve this clause? Yes. We signed. Mrs. Chen and David witnessed. The notary's seal pressed into the page with a bite I could feel through the paper. A portable scanner hummed, swallowing each signature into a digital vault. Somewhere on a server, a duplicate of my decision planted roots. During a break, Bruce poured water into thin glasses and stood by the window with me, watching gulls ride the wind above the ferry building clock. You know he'll try the emotional approach first, Bruce said. Family meetings, public scenes, a plea for the grandchildren. When that fails, he'll pivot to legal intimidation. I expect it, I said. I also expect him to read every word of that rationale while standing in a crowded space. I paused. They land 2 Thursdays from now at SFO. Flight 441 from Honolulu. Bruce considered that. A public service of papers is legal. It's also instructive. I don't want to humiliate him, I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. I want him to understand that choices close doors. Some stay closed. That, Bruce said, is a kind of mercy. We finished the execution ceremony. He placed the originals in a cream envelope waxed with a crimson stamp. Then handed me 2 sealed copies. Keep one at home, one in a safe deposit box. I'll hold the originals and digital backups. If anything changes, we can amend. It won't, I said. He walked me to the lobby. Beyond the glass, the Bay Bridge arched like a solution drawn with a compass. People hurried with phones and coffees, unaware that upstairs a man had just turned his life 90 degrees. Lee, Bruce said, you did something difficult and necessary. You drew a line, and you drew it clean. Call me when their return flight is inbound. I will. I shook his hand. One more thing. If he contacts you, I don't want engagement unless it's through counsel. Understood, Bruce said. And Lee, document everything. Every call, Every message. Silence is a record. 2. Driving home across the bridge, I watched the sunlight drag a river of gold along the steel. Oakland climbed toward the hills I'd known for 40 years. The house greeted me with the smell of polished wood and the faintest trace of Martha's lavender oil, which probably lived only in memory now. I set one envelope in the desk drawer and walked the other to the hall closet, where a small safe clicked open with the weight of finality. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, an unknown number. Hawaiian area code. I let it ring out. A voicemail arrived, then another. I didn't press play. A hummingbird needled the red glass feeder outside, flashing green, then vanished. In the evening, I cooked eggs and toast and ate them at the small table by the window. The neighborhood settled. Sprinklers. A dog bark. The soft unspooling of a life that didn't need anyone's permission. I sipped tea and looked at the mantel where pictures stood in neat rows, graduations, birthdays, Christmas mornings. I didn't flip the frames down. I didn't need to. Memory wasn't the enemy. Misuse was. On the notepad, I drew one last line on the day's timeline. May 25th, 2025 execution of will and trust. Originals secured. Then, beneath it, a sentence Martha would have liked. Mercy is clarity, given early. Justice is clarity, given late. I capped the pen, turned off the lamp, and let the house go quiet around me, the kind of quiet that gathers itself before a clean, bright morning. Monday morning carried a strange brightness, the kind that makes the bay shimmer like a promise. I drove back to the glass tower downtown, this time without nerves or hesitation. Bruce had already prepared the documents, all that remained was the act of making everything official. His conference room was ready when I arrived, polished mahogany table, water glasses arranged like chess pieces, a notary book waiting open beside two witnesses. The air itself felt ceremonial. Mr. Willis, Mrs. Chen greeted me with that quiet authority of someone who's done this hundreds of times. We'll record today's execution for legal protection. You'll state your name and confirm your intentions on camera. Bruce entered, buttoning his jacket. Morning, Lee. Are you still comfortable with the provisions we discussed? More than comfortable, I said. I'm ready. The video camera blinked red as Bruce began reading aloud. The testator, Lee Willis, being of sound mind and free will, executes this last will and testament on May 25th, 2025. The words filled the room like steady drumbeats. Each clause struck another nail into the coffin of manipulation. Simon Willis is to receive nothing. All assets transferred to charitable trusts. Executor empowered to act without interference. When it was my turn to sign, the pen felt heavy but certain in my hand. My signature looped cleanly across the line. No tremor, no doubt. The notary's seal pressed into the paper with a click that sounded like the door of a vault closing. Bruce gathered the pages, checking every line. You've just given permanence to your boundaries. Lee, congratulations. Feels less like congratulations, I said, and more like liberation. He smiled. Liberation is the right word. We packed everything into a sealed leather portfolio, 2 witness signatures, video evidence, timestamps, and Bruce's own affidavit of mental competency. Nothing Simon could twist, nothing a lawyer could undo. When do they come home? Bruce asked, sliding the envelope across the table. Thursday afternoon, I said. Flight 441 from Honolulu. He nodded slowly, understanding. You want me there? Yes, I said. If there's ever been a moment to deliver truth in person, it's that one. The days that followed were quiet and methodical. I kept my routine intact, because routine gives grief no foothold. Morning walks through Montclair's sloping streets. Afternoons spent pruning Martha's roses, their buds blushing against the June air. Evenings with a book and black tea. The hum of my refrigerator the only noise. Each day, Bruce called with updates. The video secured in 3 encrypted backups. Copies of the will stored off-site. My accounts retitled under the new trust name, the Willis Foundation for Quiet Good. The name made me smile. Martha would have loved that. Humble, service-minded, nothing flashy. She used to say, if you're lucky enough to have plenty, make your thank you louder than your pride. Simon's number appeared on my phone every evening, his messages piling up unread. The first ones were angry. The later ones desperate. Dad, let's talk. I said things I didn't mean. We can fix this. Then. Fern's parents are furious. The kids don't understand. Please call me. I didn't answer. Silence had become my sharpest instrument. By Thursday morning, I'd memorized the plan. Bruce would meet me at San Francisco International. Terminal 3. Arrivals from Honolulu. He'd carry the original will and one notarized copy. We'd stand near the security rope where families usually waited with balloons and signs. Only this time, the welcome would be written on legal paper. I polished my shoes, something I hadn't done in years, and wore the navy blazer Martha bought me for our 40th anniversary. It still fit, a little tighter around the shoulders but dignified. In the mirror, the man staring back looked composed, older. Yes, but unshakably clear. At 3:45 p.m., the arrival board blinked. Flight 441 landed. My pulse slowed instead of quickening. They'll come through those doors, Bruce said quietly, adjusting his tie. The leather portfolio rested under his arm. Once I serve him, you don't need to say a word if you don't want to. Oh, I'll speak, I said, just enough. Families began pouring through customs, sun-kissed and weary. Lays still bright around their necks. Laughter echoed. Luggage wheels rattled. The smell of coffee and jet fuel mixed into that familiar airport haze of reunions and exhaustion. Then I saw them. Fern came first, her sunglasses perched on her head, carrying duty-free bags and that tourist glow already fading. The children followed, Mia clutching a plastic ukulele, Ethan dragging a stuffed dolphin by the tail. Then Simon appeared, relaxed, scrolling through his phone like a man who thought the storm had passed. Mia spotted me first. Grandpa, she squealed, breaking away from the crowd. Ethan followed, both of them running full speed until they collided into my knees. I crouched down, hugging them tight, breathing in the coconut shampoo and sunscreen. I missed you, I said softly. Grandpa, you should have come, Ethan said. There were dolphins and pineapples everywhere. I know, I smiled. I was thinking about you the whole time. When I stood, Simon had frozen halfway through the terminal. The smile slid from his face as he noticed Bruce beside me, tailored suit. Portfolio in hand, his steps slowed. The color drained from his sunburned skin. Dad, he said, voice cautious. Testing. What are you doing here? Welcoming you home, I replied. How was paradise? Fern's eyes flicked between us, her expression tightening as she spotted the embossed law firm logo on Bruce's folder. Lee, what's going on? Bruce stepped forward, professional and precise. Mr. Simon Willis? Simon's gaze darted between him and me. Yeah. My name is Bruce Harland, counsel for Mr. Lee Willis. I've been authorized to deliver a copy of his executed last will and testament. Dated May 25, 2025. He extended the sealed envelope. The hum of the terminal seemed to fade around us. Fern's hand flew to her mouth. Pearl and Saul, standing a few paces behind with luggage, went silent. Simon took the envelope like it might burn him. What the hell is this? I said nothing. I wanted the paper to speak first. He tore the seal open, the sound sharp as breaking glass, and scanned the first page. His brow furrowed, then his eyes widened. This can't be real, he muttered. You disinherited me? Fern leaned over his shoulder, reading. Her lips parted in disbelief. Lee, think of the children. You can't mean this. I thought of the children, I said quietly. That's why I paid for their vacation. And that's why this money will now help hundreds of others who'll never leave their fathers behind. Simon's voice cracked into anger. You can't do this to your own family. I'm your son. You were, I said, until you decided I was disposable. His grip tightened on the papers, crumpling the edges. You'll regret this, old man, he hissed. Bruce's voice cut through like polished steel. I'd advise you not to repeat that sentence. Mr. Willis, it's already on record once. And it reads poorly in court. Simon froze, realizing every word was documented. Fern turned pale. Around us, travelers pretended not to stare. But the scene was too sharp, too human to ignore. Pearl whispered, Lee, please. Whatever this is, Can't it wait until home? No, I said. Some lessons belong in daylight. Simon's knuckles whitened as he clutched the documents. His lips trembled, not from guilt, but from the sheer disbelief that his father had drawn a line he could not cross. Fern grabbed his arm, whispering urgently, but he shook her off. You can't be serious, he hissed, his voice breaking through the hum of the terminal. Dad, after everything I've done for this family. After everything I've done for this family. I corrected softly. He blinked, thrown off by the calmness in my tone. The calm unnerved him more than shouting ever could. Around us, the steady rhythm of airport life, rolling luggage, intercom calls, footsteps, continued like background music to a truth long overdue. You paid for my education. Yes, Simon said, forcing his voice into reason. You helped when things were tight. That's what parents do. But this? He shook the papers, the legal stamp flashing under the fluorescent lights. This is revenge. No, I said, this is balance. Fern's eyes darted nervously between us. Lee, you're overreacting. You don't know how hard things have been. The mortgage, the medical bills. Simon was trying to protect you. Too. Protect me? I almost laughed. By taking my money, leaving me stranded in an airport, and teaching your children that deceit is a vacation plan? Fern flinched, color draining from her cheeks. Bruce stood silently beside me, like a statue of restraint. He didn't need to speak. The weight of his presence gave every word I said the power of law. Simon's voice rose, attracting glances from nearby passengers. You're punishing me because of one mistake. One mistake? I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. Simon, I trusted you with $20,000. You booked 4 tickets 6 weeks before the trip, without me. You signed my late wife's name on the reservation. That wasn't a mistake. That was a plan. He froze. Fern's eyes widened. She hadn't known that part. You used Mom's name? She whispered. Simon's jaw flexed. No words coming. The silence was answer enough. Fern took a small step back, her face twisting in shock. Simon, tell me that's not true. It doesn't matter, he snapped. It was just a placeholder. It matters, I said. It matters because it told me everything I needed to know about what kind of man my son has become. I could see Saul and Pearl in the background now, standing awkwardly near their luggage. Pearl's voice trembled as she said, "Oh, Lee, please, can't we all just..." "Don't," Saul murmured, placing a hand on her arm. Let him finish. His accountant's instincts had already told him what those papers meant. Simon glanced between us, searching for allies, but found none. Even his children sensed something heavy in the air. Mia tugged Fern's sleeve. Mom, why is Grandpa upset? Fern knelt, her voice breaking. Sweetheart, sometimes adults make mistakes. Yes, I said, interrupting gently, and sometimes those mistakes teach lessons money can't buy. Simon straightened, puffing his chest, trying to reclaim control. You think you can erase me from your life with a few signatures? You're still my father. The courts will see through this. You'll be declared unfit, manipulated, whatever it takes. I'll fight this. Bruce stepped forward, tone calm but cutting. You're welcome to try, Mr. Willis. However, your father's mental competency is documented on video with medical witnesses. Notarized under California statute, a contest will only expose your threats and financial dependency on public record. The color drained completely from Simon's face. This is insane, he muttered. Fern's whisper trembled. Lee, please, the kids. I looked at the 2 small faces watching from behind her legs. Eyes wide with confusion and fear. I crouched down, meeting their gaze. Mia, Ethan, I said softly, you didn't do anything wrong. You're wonderful kids. Don't ever let anyone teach you that love comes with a price tag. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. But Daddy said you were mad at us. My heart tightened. No, son, I said, my voice cracking for the first time that day. I'm not mad at you. I'm just done being hurt. Simon's jaw tightened, but guilt flickered behind his rage. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Behind me, Bruce closed his portfolio, signaling the end. Our business here is concluded. Simon's voice followed us, desperate now, Dad, you can't just walk away. We're family. I turned back once. Not angry, just tired. Family isn't defined by blood, Simon. It's defined by presence. You left me at an airport and called it a mistake. But this, I gestured to the envelope still clutched in his trembling hands, this isn't punishment. It's proof that I finally learned. He stared at me, eyes wide, chest heaving. Around us, people slowed their steps, sensing a story they'd tell later. The man who met his family with a lawyer instead of open arms. Fern covered her face. Pearl began to cry softly. Saul looked down, shaking his head. Actions, he murmured, always have consequences. Bruce touched my shoulder lightly. Shall we? Yes, I said. As we walked toward the exit, I didn't look back, but I could feel Simon's eyes on me. Burning with confusion, anger, maybe even regret, but regret too late is just memory with teeth. The automatic doors slid open. Warm afternoon light poured through, bright and clean. Each step away from that terminal felt lighter, like I was walking out of a cage I'd built with my own kindness. Bruce's car waited by the curb. He opened the door, but before getting in, I turned once more toward the bustling crowd behind the glass. I could still see Simon standing there, clutching that envelope like a lifeline slipping through his fingers. Bruce followed my gaze. He'll contest it, he said. Let him, I replied. Every time he does, he'll be reminded of who put him there. We drove in silence through the Bay Bridge traffic. The city unfolded before us in gold and shadow. Bruce finally spoke. You did the right thing, Lee. It's not easy to choose dignity over comfort. I nodded slowly. Martha used to say mercy is giving people another chance. But sometimes mercy is walking away before they take another piece of you. He smiled faintly. Then you've given them mercy, too. When he dropped me off, the porch light clicked on automatically, bathing my doorway in soft amber. My house stood waiting, quiet, steady, mine. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. No shouting, no guilt, no manipulation, just the smell of old wood and fresh air. On the mantel, Martha's photo caught the light. For a moment, it looked like she was smiling. I whispered, "It's done, love." The house didn't answer. It didn't need to. Because for the first time in years, it finally felt like home again. The morning after the confrontation at the airport arrived in gentle silence. No ringing phone, no pounding on the door, just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint chatter of birds outside my kitchen window. The world hadn't ended, it had simply realigned itself. I brewed my coffee the way Martha used to like it, strong, with a hint of cinnamon. The smell filled the house like a quiet victory. Sunlight poured through the blinds, warming the oak table where Bruce's folder still sat, sealed and untouched. For the first time in months, there was no pit in my stomach, no dread about what kind of favor Simon might call to ask for next. Only calm. But peace never stays unchallenged for long. By mid-morning, my phone buzzed with the persistence of someone who hadn't learned a thing. The caller ID flashed Simon Willis. I ignored it. He called again, and again. Then came the flood of texts. Dad, this has gone too far. We can fix this if you just talk to me. The lawyer said this isn't binding. You've been manipulated. You can't do this to your grandchildren. Each message was a variation of the same song. Guilt, persuasion, fear, and then, predictably, the verse of rage. You'll regret this, old man. The same line, the same tone, the same mistake. I turned off the phone, set it face down on the table, and finished my coffee. When I finally powered it back on that afternoon, there was a voicemail, not from Simon, but from Bruce. Lee, just a quick update. His steady voice said, Simon's already contacted 2 separate attorneys. Both called my office for verification. Once I explained the documentation, they declined to represent him. Looks like your son's learning the hard way that not every lawyer takes a doomed case. Call me if you'd like me to handle future inquiries directly. I smiled, exhaling slowly. Good man, Bruce. The following week passed like a gentle tide. I walked every morning to the neighborhood park, nodding to the same joggers, the same couples walking their dogs. For the first time, I noticed the small things. The way the light hit the bay at 8 a.m. The sound of wind moving through the eucalyptus trees. It was strange how peace had texture once you made room for it. On Thursday, I visited the Oakland Children's Education Foundation, one of the beneficiaries of my new will. The director, a woman named Andrea with kind eyes and paint-stained hands, greeted me like an old friend. She walked me through classrooms filled with laughter and crayons, where volunteers helped kids learn to read after school. Some of the children reminded me of Mia and Ethan, bright, full of questions, untouched by greed. When I told Andrea about the donation plan, she clasped my hands with tears in her eyes. "Mr. Willis," she said softly, "you're changing lives." I looked around the room, at the kids drawing suns and houses and dreams, and said, "They're the ones changing mine." From there, I drove to Berkeley and met with the scholarship coordinator at the engineering department. He showed me the plaque wall, names of donors. Some small, some grand, each etched in brass. "We'll have your name here, too," he said. "Make it the Martha and Lee Willis Engineering Scholarship." I replied, "She loved builders. She built me." That night, I sat by the window in my old armchair, the twilight spilling through the glass. I wrote letters, not out of anger, but clarity. One for Bruce, one for the foundation, and one for Simon. The last one wasn't for reconciliation. It was for understanding. "Simon, I don't hate you. I pity what greed turned you into. You were raised to know better, to understand work, honor, gratitude. Somewhere along the way, you started confusing kindness for weakness and love for leverage. I hope one day you see what you've lost, not the money, but the man who would have given you everything without question. I'm done teaching you through generosity. Now the lesson will come through silence. Dad." I folded the letter, sealed it, and left it on my desk, not to mail, just to release. Friday evening brought a knock at the door. When I opened it, Bruce stood there in a gray suit, holding a thin envelope. He tried again. He said, "Filed a petition claiming undue influence and emotional distress." I chuckled. That didn't take long. Bruce handed me the paper. The court clerk dismissed it within hours. He didn't even pay the filing fee. "Let him run out of steam," I said. "He's chasing smoke." Bruce studied me for a moment, then nodded. "You know, Lee, most people in your position would have broken down somewhere between grief and guilt." "I did," I said quietly, "just not where anyone could see." He smiled faintly. "Well, you came out of it cleaner than most." After he left, I stood at the window, watching the streetlights flicker on. The city outside was alive, cars humming, people laughing, ordinary life unfolding. But inside my house, everything was still, clean, whole. My phone buzzed again, this time a new number. I didn't recognize it, but curiosity got the better of me. It was Fern. "Lee, I don't know what to say. You've made your point. The kids keep asking about you. Could you please see them? Just them. They miss you." I stared at the message for a long moment. The temptation to respond was sharp and sudden, but I knew where it led. Contact meant openings. Openings meant manipulation. I couldn't let guilt rewrite the boundaries I'd fought so hard to draw. Still, the ache in my chest was real. I did miss them. I set the phone down and looked toward Martha's photograph on the mantel. Her eyes seemed to ask the question for me. "Can you love without enabling?" "I can," I whispered, "but not on their terms." Instead of replying to Fern, I made a quiet decision. The next day, I'd contact the foundation again and establish a small yearly grant for local families to visit educational museums, the kind of trips I'd wanted to share with my own grandchildren. They didn't need to know it came from me. Maybe one day, when they were older, they'd stumble upon the scholarship plaques and wonder about the name Willis. That would be enough. As night settled, I stepped out onto the porch. The air cool and fragrant with jasmine. I looked up at the sky, clear, endless, forgiving. Somewhere out there, my son was pacing, angry, afraid of losing control over a man he no longer understood. And for the first time, that didn't sadden me. It freed me. Justice, I realized, isn't loud. It's not the slam of a gavel or the shout of triumph. It's the quiet breath you take when you've reclaimed your dignity and finally stop apologizing for it. Inside, the clock ticked softly on the mantel. I smiled, turned off the porch light, and let the darkness cradle the house that was, at long last, my own. A month passed. June melted into July, and with it, the last echoes of Simon's frantic calls faded into silence. For the first time in years, I lived without waiting for someone else's need to dictate my day. My mornings belonged to the garden, my afternoons to books I'd been too busy to read, and my evenings to the kind of quiet that doesn't ask anything of you. But peace doesn't mean forgetting. It just means remembering without pain. One Friday morning, as I was pruning the rosebushes Martha had planted decades ago, the phone rang. It was Bruce. "Lee," he said in that calm, measured tone that always preceded something worth listening to. "You'll want to hear this. Simon's facing foreclosure." I didn't speak for a moment. I felt no glee, just the dull click of inevitability. Bruce continued. "Apparently, he refinanced the house twice and defaulted on one of the loans. I have a feeling he expected your inheritance to cover it." "Expected," I repeated softly. "That's the problem with expectations, they don't survive reality." "He's also been calling the office again," Bruce added, less confrontational this time. Sounded defeated. I could picture it. The same son who once sneered, "Old man," now scrambling for footing. Not because of malice, but because entitlement had left him soft. "If he calls again," I said, "be polite, but tell him the will is final. And Bruce, don't send me transcripts anymore. I don't need to hear excuses." "Understood," Bruce said. "You've done enough." After hanging up, I stood on the porch, shears still in my hand, watching a robin dart through the air. I didn't feel proud of what was happening to Simon, but I didn't feel responsible for it either. That, perhaps, was the truest victory. 2 days later, I saw Fern's name flash on my phone. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Lee," she began, her voice trembling. "I wouldn't call if it wasn't important. It's Simon. He's not doing well. The mortgage company called this morning. We may lose the house. He's blaming himself, saying he's ruined everything. Please, can you at least talk to him?" Her words spilled like a confession, filled with guilt but not yet humility. "Fern," I said quietly, "I warned him years ago that dependence isn't security. It's a leash." He didn't listen. "I know," she said, almost whispering, "but the kids, they keep asking about you." That hit a tender nerve. I could picture their faces at the airport, the confusion in Mia's eyes, the tremor in Ethan's small voice. Children shouldn't pay for their parents' sins, but I also knew that re-entering Simon's orbit meant reopening the wound I'd just healed. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "But Fern, don't call me expecting money. I won't rescue him again." "I understand," she said softly. "That's not what I'm asking." When the call ended, I sat for a long while, staring at the photograph on my mantel, our last family Christmas. Simon had been smiling in that picture, arm around Fern, kids in front of them, the glow of the tree painting their faces with borrowed warmth. I used to believe that photo meant happiness. Now, I saw it differently. It was a snapshot of denial, the calm before truth demands its due. That night, I wrote another letter, not to Simon, but to Mia and Ethan. "My dear grandchildren, one day you'll be old enough to understand the difference between love and help. I've always loved you, that will never change, but helping people who refuse to learn often hurts them more than it helps. Your father and I had to learn that lesson the hard way. When you're older, I hope you'll visit the university one day. Look for a scholarship plaque with our family name. That's your legacy, opportunity earned by gratitude, not inherited by birth. With love, Grandpa Lee." I sealed the envelope and placed it inside my desk drawer, beside Martha's keepsakes. Maybe one day, when they were grown, the letter would find them. Maybe it would reach them when they needed it most. Weeks passed quietly. The heat of July thickened, the air heavy with the scent of dry grass and jasmine. One afternoon, while I was reading by the window, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, Fern stood there, eyes red-rimmed but steady. "I'm sorry to just show up," she said, clutching her purse. I didn't know where else to go. I stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, she looked around the living room like it was a museum of memories, photos, Furniture. The faint trace of Martha's perfume still clinging to the walls. This house hasn't changed, she said softly. It's had no reason to, I replied. We sat at the kitchen table. The same one where I'd once served Sunday pancakes to a family that no longer existed in the same way. She finally spoke. Simon asked me to apologize. He won't call because he knows you won't answer. He's not the same. Angry, yes, but broken too. He's been looking for work. Anything. The arrogance is gone. I studied her face. It wasn't manipulation this time, it was honesty wrapped in exhaustion. Fern, I said, you're stronger than he is. Always have been. If you're here for the kids, I'll help, but not through Simon, not through guilt. Her eyes filled with tears. I just want them to know they still have family. They do, I said gently, just not the kind that buys silence. She nodded slowly, understanding. You really meant it at the airport, didn't you? Every word. She looked down at her hands. Then thank you for teaching him what I couldn't. After she left, I stood at the window, watching her car disappear down the hill. The ache that followed wasn't anger anymore, it was something quieter. Like mourning the death of a future that could have been. But beneath it all was peace. Steady and immovable. A week later, Bruce called again. You might want to know, he said. The foreclosure went through. Simon moved out yesterday. They're renting a small townhouse now. Nothing extravagant. Good, I said. Maybe simplicity will teach him what abundance couldn't. Are you okay? Bruce asked. I smiled faintly. Better than I've been in years. That night, I poured myself a glass of scotch, the same brand Martha used to buy me for my birthdays, and stepped out onto the porch. The neighborhood was quiet. Crickets hummed. A cool breeze carried the faint scent of night-blooming jasmine. For a long time, I just stood there, watching the stars blink awake one by one. Somewhere across the city, my son was relearning humility. And somewhere else, children I'd never meet were reading under lights paid for by my foundation. It was enough. Maybe that's what justice really is, not revenge or victory, but the quiet satisfaction of knowing that pain finally taught what kindness couldn't. Inside, the house clock chimed 9. I took a slow sip of my drink and whispered to the night. We're even now, son, not enemies, just even. And for the first time since that day at the airport, I slept without dreams. The summer eased into September quietly, as if the world itself had decided to let me breathe. My mornings became predictable, coffee on the porch, a walk around the neighborhood, and the company of the same bluebird that had made its home in Martha's old feeder. Life had rhythm again, not because everything was perfect, but because I finally understood that peace doesn't come from control. It comes from letting go. A thin envelope arrived one afternoon. The handwriting familiar. Fern. Inside was a short letter. And 2 drawings, crayon sketches of a man with white hair standing next to 2 children. The words written in a child's uneven scrawl read, We miss you, Grandpa. We love you. Mia and Ethan. I sat there a long time, tracing their little stick figures with my thumb. I could see them again in my mind, their laughter at the airport. Their confusion, their innocence. It hurt, but the kind of hurt that reminded me I was still human. That I could still love, even from a distance. Fern's letter was brief. Lee. We've moved into a smaller place near the bay. The kids are adjusting well. Simon's working part-time and taking on freelance consulting again. He's quieter now, different. I think the reality of everything finally settled in. He's been attending counseling, and the kids talk about you every week. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know we're trying. Thank you for the lesson none of us will ever forget. Fern. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in Martha's keepsake box. Some things didn't need replies. Silence could hold more grace than words. That evening, I walked down to Lake Merritt, the place where Martha and I used to sit when we were younger. Feeding ducks and talking about everything from retirement to forgiveness. The sunset bled across the water in streaks of orange and violet. A man my age sat on a nearby bench, feeding crumbs to the birds. He looked over and nodded. Beautiful night, he said. Best kind, I replied, the kind that reminds you you're still here. We talked for a bit, about the quiet, About growing old. About children who forget that love isn't a transaction. He laughed when I said that. Ain't that the truth? My son stopped calling when I stopped paying his phone bill. We shared the kind of laughter that comes from recognition, not humor. Two old men who'd lived long enough to understand that sometimes the hardest act of love is walking away. When I got home, I poured myself tea and sat at the desk where everything had begun, the same oak surface where I'd once spread out receipts, invoices, evidence of betrayal. Now, the desk held only two things: a framed picture of Martha, and a stack of thank you letters from students whose scholarships had already been funded through the Willis Foundation. One of them read, "Dear Mr. Willis, I'm the first in my family to study engineering. Because of your scholarship, I'll graduate next spring. I don't know your story, but I'll carry your name into every project I build. You helped me believe that people still care. Aaron." I stared at that last line. You helped me believe that people still care. That was it. That was the legacy Martha and I had hoped for. Not wealth, not praise, just proof that decency could outlive disappointment. As night settled, I lit a small candle by Martha's photo. Her smile in that picture still had the power to calm me. We did it, I whispered. Our kindness finally found its place. The phone rang once more, unknown number. Local. I hesitated, then answered. Simon's voice came through, soft, stripped of all its old bravado. "Dad," he said quietly, "I won't keep you long. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." For a moment, I said nothing. His voice carried exhaustion, the kind that comes when pride finally runs out of fuel. He continued, "I know I don't deserve another chance. You were right about everything. I treated you like a bank instead of a father. I'm paying for that now. But I want you to know, I've been trying to fix things. For Fern, for the kids." My throat tightened. "Are you working?" I asked. "Yes," he said, a small exhale of relief in his voice, as if he'd been waiting for me to ask. "It's not much, but it's honest. I'm learning to start over." For a while, neither of us spoke. Then I said quietly, "That's good, Simon. I hope you keep going." "I don't expect forgiveness," he said, "but, thank you, for finally teaching me what being a man means." I closed my eyes, the words settling deep. "You taught yourself that, son. I just stopped getting in the way." He gave a shaky laugh. "The kids keep talking about seeing you again." "Maybe one day," I said softly, "when it's time." "Okay," he whispered. "Good night, Dad." When the line went dead, I sat there for a long time, staring into the quiet. The ache that had once been sharp was now just a dull echo, fading into acceptance. Sometimes justice and forgiveness walk the same road, they just start from opposite directions. The candle by Martha's photo burned low, casting gentle shadows across the room. I imagined her voice beside me, the way she'd always end every long conversation with a single line. "See? You got there in your own time." Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the scent of jasmine through the open window. I leaned back in my chair, watching the flame flicker, and let peace finally settle in its rightful place. In the end, I hadn't destroyed Simon's world. I'd forced him to rebuild it on solid ground. And that, I realized, was the quietest revenge of all. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Revenge in Silence, and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Sometimes justice doesn't roar, it whispers. And in that silence, we find our strength again.